You about the fact that Vice President Kamala Harris was holding a fundraiser in San Francisco, attracting a lot of protesters. Joining us now is Professor Stephen Fish, political scientist with UC Berkeley. Steve, thank you for doing this. We'll get the obvious out of the way. She is not worried about California votes. This is strictly about piling up cash for her campaign.
It's mostly about that, Catherine. She's here to raise money, but it also, is kind of a morale booster to really, mix it up with your own people, hang out with them for a while. And also, President Biden kind of lagged in terms of enthusiasm with high tech. In Silicon Valley, he wasn't all that popular. Most people in Silicon Valley tilt Democrat, but President Trump was actually able to make some inroads here. In part, I just think because, President Biden isn't the kind of guy that really turns on people in Silicon Valley. He's kind of staid, he's risk averse, and Trump, for all his liabilities, does seem to be, a kind of hard-charging, high dominance kind of character. I think what Kamala Harris is trying to do is to reverse that drift toward Trump in Silicon Valley, and I think she's going to succeed in doing so.
Yeah, it's a campaign with a very, very different vibe, as you're pointing out, Steve. Exactly. Harris is still, you could argue, in the honeymoon period with voters. Any idea on when that could end?
Well, it doesn't have to end at all. We have to, recognize that she's been doing an awful lot of things right, things that the Democrats haven't done right for the better part of a decade. She's been exuberant. She's been very aggressive. She's focused the spotlight on herself, not just on how awful Trump is and focusing the spotlight on Trump, and on her running mate. She's focused it as well. So all of a sudden, the Democrats are really seizing the initiative. The risk aversion seems to be gone. The risk of offending people seems to be gone. They're really going after Trump. This is a big change in the whole zeitgeist of her campaign. The question is whether she's going to keep this going. If the Democrats now, including her and Governor Walz, just fall back on the usual bromides about, protecting the middle class and reducing prescription drug prices, then this campaign the honeymoon could be over right away. But if they recognize the fact that their goal now really needs to be showing that they're stronger, they're tougher, they're more decisive, more resolute, more patriotic than Trump is, then this honeymoon could carry all the way into the election. Because let's face it, Trump's advantage all along has not been the popularity of his policies or his charming personality or anything of the sort. He doesn't have those things going for him. It's been that he's perceived as more decisive, as tougher, is the guy who doesn't care what the polls say. He's going to tell you what he thinks. That's always been Trump's kind of superpower. If the Democrats can overmatch him in that realm, which finally they seem to be starting to possibly do, they can take him out. They can take out his biggest strength. And if they grab the flag along with it, Trump also, for a bunch of reasons, has been seen as more patriotic, mostly because the Democrats have gotten squeamish about patriotism. They can win this thing big. This election doesn't even have to be close.
Steve, won't voters at some point want Harris to outline a more specific platform beyond, a chicken in every pot, or you'll only have to work one job? We're not hearing a lot of specifics on things like the border or the fact that there's a lot of divided, agitated voters regarding what's happening in Israel and Gaza. Is she more likely to do that after the convention?
You know what, Catherine? I'm going to say something that might sound a little strange. She doesn't have to do it. This election is not about the issues. Democrats have been mesmerized for years about this notion that people vote on stances on, quote unquote, the issues. They don't. They vote for the candidate that makes them feel better about their country, who makes them feel better about themselves, who seems to be stronger and a more appealing leader. Everybody knows that her positions on things like abortion or health care and things like that are the same as President Biden's. They're basic Democratic Party positions. Of course, as the campaign goes on, she'll emphasize those positions. Her campaign will run ads on them. But really just campaigning on, quote unquote, the issues is not the way to win this campaign. Everybody knows her stance on the issues. Even people who aren't all that politically attentive. What she now has to do is show us she is a leader, a really really appealing, strong leader. And what's rocketed her campaign from, the doldrums of the way things were when President Biden was still running to what it is right now is not that she started talking more incisively about immigration or abortion or anything else. It's that it looks like she's a real leader. That's what Americans are hungry for.
It does seem as though the Trump camp, Steve, not ready. They weren't ready for the Harris-Walz campaign. Do they seem to be gaining any traction at this point?
Not so far. And in fact, they're so not ready that they're complaining and whining. How could they do this to us? We thought we were going to be Biden, and now, bait and switch. It's been amazing to me the extent to which Trump and Vance have actually been moaning about this. I mean, it's such a show of weakness. I think, once you stand up to these bullies, instead of leaving them in charge of the playground, which is what the Democrats have done ever since Trump came along, they fold. This is what happens with bullies. They're real tough, and they're in charge, and they dominate everybody until finally you just stand up to them. That seems to be what's going on right now. The Trump campaign is almost it's almost come to a stop. Trump isn't traveling around. I think he has one campaign event in Montana this week. He's whining. He isn't saying anything of any interest to anybody. The same holds for J.D. Vance. And the Democrats are doing the right thing by, instead of taking Trump so seriously and just try to terrify voters with how awful Trump is and a Trump second term would be, they're ridiculing him. They're turning him into a meme. That's how you beat somebody like Donald Trump. That's how you pull down a bully. You don't act like you're afraid of them and then just try to terrify voters. You say, look, these guys are really awful. They're laughably awful, and they're never going to get to office because we will win. One thing I've noticed in the Harris campaign, too, is she never talks about, we're going to try to win, or if we pull together, we're going to win. She just says, we're going to win. That's actually really smart rhetoric. That's what I call high dominance rhetoric, and it's working beautifully.
Hey, Steve, one last question. It does seem that arguably both Trump and Harris have been mostly making speeches to their base supporters. Do they need to reach some persuadable voters and do a better job of that?
Well, they certainly do, Catherine. If you look at the Republican convention, it was just one big pitch to not only like the base, but like the hardcore deplorable part of the base. It was unbelievable. There was no effort whatsoever to kind of, appeal to swing voters in that convention. This gives the Democrats an enormous, opportunity. And so far, it looks like they're taking advantage of it. I think that the choice of Governor Walz as her vice presidential running mate was an ingenious one, because even though he's progressive and his stands on policy issues, his whole style is so appealing to most, people who, so-called middle Americans and ordinary folks, that I think he's really going to benefit the ticket. So, the Harris-Walz campaign is a real opportunity to reach out to undecided voters, all the more given the fact that Trump is not doing so. They do seem to be doing so far, and you can see the change in the poll numbers. Harris is now up in every major poll. An incredible change over just a few weeks ago.
All right, Professor Steve Fish, thank you as always. We really appreciate your time. Thank you, Steve.
My pleasure, Catherine.
Thanks, Steve.